I'll always remember the sound of the click of the crossbow. I'll always remember that. I just look over and Collin's on the ground and he's yelling out. He's like, call 911. And this is a guy who never goes to the doctor. So I knew it was serious. And I'm like,
body heals itself.
Yeah.
Are we fine? I'm good. I'm good.
That or I'm lazy.
Yeah.
God has a dream specifically for you. And if you don't play your part, it won't get played. And if your part doesn't get played, I assure you, souls can be lost. The world doesn't need another John Paul II or Mother Teresa. The world needs you. And your ordinary life has an extraordinary mission. Now is your time.
You're listening to the Extraordinary Mission Podcast with Dr. John Wood. Dr. John Wood is an optometrist, author, speaker, and saint in the making. He has published 3 books and speaks across the country, energizing the church to pursue our extraordinary mission. And now, your host, Dr. John Wood.
Welcome to the Extraordinary Mission Podcast. I'm your host, John Wood, and this is a podcast where we talk about our extraordinary mission of becoming the saints that we were created to be. And as I travel across the country and I speak to a lot of people, I often hear, especially from maybe some teenagers or people that maybe aren't as engaged in their faith, they talk about how the faith isn't really relevant to your life. You know, I always disagree. I believe it's relevant to every single thing we do, but there's one thing that we can all agree on is that our faith is relevant to our death. And that's something we all have to face, something we're all going to experience at some point. And our guest today had a very close encounter with that. I'm here with Collin and Rachel Snyder. They have a pretty amazing story. I want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine it's a sunny October day, and you go outside in the backyard with your wife and your kid, and you're just throwing the frisbee or something to your dog, and all of a sudden you find yourself laying on the ground with an arrow piercing both of your legs. And it sounds crazy. It sounds something out of the 2nd or 3rd century, like one of the martyrs, like St. Sebastian or something. But no, this actually happened to Collin a couple years back. And it's an incredible story, amazing experience that they're going to share with us today. All the fear, all the anxiety, all the stress, and all the prayers that kind of got them through that experience, which really is, it's going to be exciting for all of us to listen to the story. I'm excited to hear your perspective of what actually happened that day. But first, I want to say welcome to the podcast, Collin and Rachel.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I'm pretty familiar with Collin and Rachel. They've actually been a big part of my ministry, Extraordinary Mission. Rachel had the joy, or maybe the sacrifice, of traveling across the country with me for 4 or 5 years. We've done a lot of events together. Rachel is a musician. She's a singer-songwriter. Her music is awesome, amazing. You can get her CD, The Light, off my website, extraordinarymission.com. You can see her voice, her beautiful music. Collin kind of started coming along with us because Collin and Rachel are high school sweethearts, dated through high school. And then when Rachel started singing at my events, Collin started to come along and got involved a little bit with our ministry, and has become a huge part of our ministry as well. And so pretty familiar with these guys. But I just want you to, maybe each of you, tell a little bit about your faith experience leading up to that accident, and kind of take us to where you were in your life at that point. So we'll start with you, Rachel.
Okay. Well, I would say my relationship with God in high school and in college and stuff up until we got married was very two-faced in a way that like 90% of me really was living for things that just weren't fulfilling me, and then the other 10% of me was just wanting I just had this deep desire to know and love God. And looking back, I see it as kind of a tug of war between God and the devil, just this intense tug of war, and who is going to win my heart. And yeah, long story short, I just developed a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, and it really took a toll on me. And then, I got to that rock bottom place, and then God just took that 10% of faith I had, that little mustard seed of faith, and just kind of moved mountains of anxiety and with it, and just transformed me. I feel like one day I was on rock bottom, and the next day I was just alive and a new person in Christ. And I'm really thankful for that experience, and because I feel like it built a solid foundation of faith before we even got married. And I feel like our marriage would be just like lacking a lot if we didn't have that. So like, yeah, that was really tough, and I don't have to tell you guys that because you all went through it with me. Thanks for that. Yeah. And But yeah, I just feel like if that didn't happen, we wouldn't be who we are today, and we wouldn't have been able to deal with the accident that happened a couple of years ago the way we did. And so, yeah, so after all of that, we got married and got pregnant right away. And now we have 2 kids, 2 years old, and the other one's 8 months old, both boys.
Awesome. So it was I got to kind of go through that journey with you and kind of see, and it was fun for me because I had you as a student.
So much fun.
I had you as a student in high school, so that's kind of how you started, with ministry with me, as I teach the high school kids, and so you're in my class. Lucky for you. And so I got to kind of see you develop as you started doing the events and playing your music and singing songs about God, and maybe that kind of influenced you a little bit, but just that transformation that you made and all the courage that you had to go through those difficult times. And sometimes those struggles are actually the things that can cure our problems. They build us, they build our character, they build our strengths. And so thanks for your witness and everything that you've done and all the ministry that you do now as well. So how about you, Collin? Tell us a little bit about, since you didn't show up for class in high school, I don't know.
I tried to convince him. I'm like, you got to come. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of where it starts. Like, I don't know, I look back at my high school and even before that, like I was blessed with so many like gifts and, just all these different, talents, I guess, but
like homecoming king and star of the basketball team and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I had a great team and Rachel was the queen, so it was easy, but I was very blessed, and I went to mass every week, and I was very fortunate. My parents brought me up in that it was important to go to mass, but that was kind of the extent of my relationship with God, I'd say. And life was fine. Everything was going well. I had a beautiful girlfriend. I had great success with sports and the teams I was on and everything. And I didn't necessarily need God other than giving him the hour each week on Sunday. And Rachel tried to get me to go to class, and I just felt weird about not going to the first one. I don't know, but long story short, go up to college and had some great friendships that I developed, and I befriended a very devout Baptist who had the most devout love for God that I've ever experienced in my life, and it was very attractive. And he had some difficult questions for me about the Catholic faith, and I was very prideful where I was from. A small German Catholic town that it's everything. It's it's what you're raised in and everything. And so in my pride, I was looking at these questions because I knew the ones I was trying to answer with were not very well because it didn't satisfy him. And so I was looking up all these things, and I didn't have the love aspect of it. And Rachel started doing your ministries and singing some of your events, and I went to one as a good boyfriend, just I'll go support Rachel and hear her sing some Christian hymns or something, because the whole Christian music world to us wasn't really it wasn't.
Yeah, you thought Christian music was like hymns and Gregorian chants, and, which is good.
Yeah. They're all good,
but not appealing maybe to a college 20-year-old.
But so I went to the event, and I got to hear Rachel's beautiful voice and some pretty amazing songs. But what I heard was, John, it was just you speaking such truth that I've never heard before in a way, and your authenticity, and just love for the faith that I've never seen in someone maybe younger, and you loved your faith, you loved living it, and it inspired me not to love my faith because I was prideful of it, but to love it because I need to love my Creator more than anything, because that's what I was missing my whole life. And so that kind of set me off on a whole nother path of just learning faith, and me and Rachel really grew a lot in those last couple of years before marriage, and it really built a great foundation for us before marriage. And I think we were extremely grateful for that opportunity, and for you especially, because
we'd not be where we are today without your
Well,
mentorship.
likewise, because I struggle with confidence, just like all of us do sometimes,
Yeah.
especially doing ministry. And sometimes I'm like, what's the point of this? I'm
Yeah.
not making a difference. But like when you see, someone like yourselves or like Collin, like very influential as a college guy that a lot of people like, and for him to kind of take a leadership role and start practicing the faith was a huge encouragement for me to see that, which is huge encouragement. And now we work together. Hopefully our students are all watching. We teach the high school kids at our parish. I don't say teach, but we do the ministry with them every week. We meet with them on
they
Wednesdays.
They probably teach us more than we teach them.
So just doing ministry with you guys has just been a huge confidence booster for me, and just to hear your witness and your stories, because people more than anything are converted by stories. They're converted by witnesses. They're converted by hearing other people's conversion and how they came to know Jesus Christ and the church and all those teachings. And so thank you again for that witness, for what you guys do. And so that kind of brings us up to, you got married a little over a year after that. Little Samuel was born, and that fall following Samuel's birth. So Samuel was 3-4 months old?
He's almost 4 months.
Yeah. A couple days before
4
his
months
birth.
old. So we're in the midst of teaching high school kids on Wednesday nights. You guys are, you got the great life now. You got a new house. You got a new baby. You're married. You got a great marriage, great relationship. Got a lot of things going for you. And so take us back to this day, October 22nd, 2017. It's a beautiful day. I remember the day. It was the feast of St. John Paul II,
Yes,
is ironic
I love
in
that.
many different ways.
When I found that out, I'm like, no, John Paul II.
because he was shot as well. And So this is a guy, and this is his feast day, and one of our favorite saints, of someone who inspired so many young people. But it was a Sunday, a beautiful day. I remember going through a walk in the woods with my own family that day, just like a perfect day. So describe that day. I guess maybe before this accident happened, tell us a little bit about your day and the experience that you had together, maybe starting with Collin.
Yeah, it was the picture perfect day. I mean, October is probably my favorite month of the year for the weather. It's starting to get a little more. The temperatures drop, and the leaves are starting to fall, especially in late October. But couldn't have been any more perfect. We started the day off with mass, and the whole weekend, we just had this heaviness on our heart. And I mean, Rachel can talk more about that.
Yeah, we went to mass, and we got home and just decided we're just gonna make this day about God. I know that it's hard for all of us sometimes to make Sunday a day of rest and about just resting in the Lord. And so, but we really wanted to make that day try extra hard to do that, because we were feeling this heaviness on our heart, like this uneasiness. And we went for a walk around one of the reservoirs that is in our town, and we were just talking about it, and we couldn't figure out why that we were feeling this uneasiness. And we decided to pray about it and stuff. And Collin then shared your thing. I always think this is interesting that you said this during the prayer about you wanted to know how, like, to offer up your sufferings better. Like, you just didn't understand how you could offer up. Do you remember what?
We talked about it a couple weeks after the accident, how we remembered that, and just kind of struck us that, well, God wanted me to find out later that day.
Yeah. So after we went for a walk and stuff, it was beautiful. Like, we were just listening to the leaves and the wind, and like, it was just, the smells of fall were amazing. And we got home and we ate steak and baked potatoes and Brussels sprouts. We'll always remember that last supper, I guess. The last.
The almost last
Don't
supper.
tell him the ending. We're not sure if he's going to survive.
Yeah.
You never know.
So we had dinner, and Collin always asked me these silly questions.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous.
Well, sometimes they are.
He always asked me, how was your day on a scale of 1 to 10? Just
Rate your day.
Rate your day.
I mean, things along that line. It's definitely the first time I ever remember Rachel answering it as a 10. I've asked her this hundreds and hundreds of times, and that's how perfect of a day we were having. Just, it was all about God, and she rated it a 10, and I was like,
and then we went outside.
I was like, our dog, he loves fetch, and I don't think we took him to the reservoir because he was still kind of a puppyish stage, and so I was like, we need to get him some exercise. I was like, and you don't have to drag him out to go play ball because he'll play for days. And so we just decided to head out in the backyard and finish the day off with some fetch.
Okay. And you don't, you live in the middle of town. Like there's houses all around you, fences, and it's just a little backyard.
Yeah.
And so you're out there and you were holding baby Samuel, right? At first. So you're holding baby Samuel. And at that point, you decided to hand Samuel over to Rachel, right? So
yeah, she was trying to have me keep him warmer, and I was one throwing the ball to Micah, so it was kind of hard to keep him warm. So I was like, all right, you keep him warm, and I'll keep tossing the ball to Micah.
All right. So what happens next? You hand the baby to Rachel, and then how long after that do you?
It was probably between 5 to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
5 to 10 seconds.
He took 2 steps towards me, gave me Samuel, and then I was just like getting Samuel settled in my arms, and then, I look back over and he's on the ground.
So did you see the arrow? Did either of you see the arrow? So basically what happens is the neighbor is practicing archery, happens to have a hunting arrow.
Yeah, broadhead tip.
A broadhead tip for those who are hunters. So, and it's just really a freak thing. They're practicing in their backyard. The arrow hits a nail in the deck, changes direction, goes over the fence because there's a fence there between your yards, right?
Yeah, because it wasn't the neighbor directly behind us. It was the neighbor like cat corners. So, it changed direction.
Changed directions, goes over the fence into your yard, and it pierces Collin through both legs.
Yeah, entered my right leg first and then went straight through, and the tip of the arrow actually lodged itself in my left leg, but in doing so it severed my right femoral artery and it clipped my left femoral artery, which for those of you that don't know, that's the main blood supply going to your legs.
So that's scary stuff. So I, from my own experience, all I remember is Rachel called me and was just said, pray for Collin. It's been a bad accident. I'm like, what happened? Car accident or whatever? Like, no.
Like, no, it's none of that.
She's not going to explain this right now. But when I later had heard, that this arrow had pierced his femoral artery, the first thing I did was Google femoral artery. I'm a doctor. I know this is serious. And I'm like, what's the chances here and stuff? And if you Google that, if people get shot in the leg through the femoral artery, they can bleed out in literally seconds. Literally seconds. And it actually pierced one and clipped the other.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you just hear like a pop and you're on the ground. Do you know what happened? Did you know what was going on there? Or?
So when I was falling, I immediately it felt, it feels, people ask how it feels, it feels like someone just punched you in the leg, both of them. And it hurt a lot, obviously. And so I'm falling and I reach down with my left hand and I grab the arrow between my legs and I'm laying there and I heard the click of a crossbow. Thankfully, I wasn't a hunter myself, but one of my roommates, he always was, targeting in his crossbow in our hallway in our condo in college. And, I was familiar with the click, so I knew right away that it was an arrow, that it was in both my legs. And Rachel couldn't have seen it because I was wearing like baggy gym shorts, my favorite baggy gym shorts.
Well, and they said it lodged just. No, they didn't say
they cut them off.
Yeah, immediately.
But so she couldn't see that it was an arrow. No. I told her that, we need to call 911. Like I was just shot.
Yeah. Well, and they said that it lodged just perfectly to where he didn't bleed out right away. He would have
so maybe the arrow kind of held things in place a little bit versus a bullet that just kind of shatters everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Rachel, so tell us your experience to this point. So you're holding baby Samuel. Did you hear anything? You see anything? Did he make a loud yell? Like what was your experience and what did you think happened?
Yeah.
Because it's not every day they're like, oh, wow, I got shot by an arrow again.
Right. Right. I'll always remember the sound of the click of the crossbow. I'll always remember that. And so I heard that, and then I just look over and Collin's on the ground and he's yelling out for, I don't know, maybe 15 seconds or something. And once he calmed down, I had no idea what happened. I didn't even have a guess of what happened. But he was like, I just got shot by an arrow, which I was surprised that you, knew what it was. But I I would have thought it was like a stick in my leg. Like, how did that just happen?
There always a stick, but yeah.
Just has a pointy tip to it.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was just pure adrenaline and shock. Like, I was like, how am I going to pick him up, put him in the car, and get him to the hospital? And that was not a good idea. He's like, call 911. And this is a guy who never goes to the doctor. So I knew it was serious. And I'm like,
Body heals itself.
yeah.
It'll be fine. I'm good. I'm good.
That or I'm lazy. But
Yeah. So yeah, calling 911 was a better idea. And I went inside, found my phone right away, thankfully. And I just remember hugging Samuel super tight because I just got that pit in my stomach. Oh my gosh, we were right there. That could have been Samuel. He could have been bending down. And I just like, that image went through my mind for weeks after, and it was hard to get out.
that was a tough one to get over with.
Could have been Samuel, yeah.
We spent some nights thinking about that, like, and we're like, you know what, it wasn't.
Yeah.
We can move it. We just have to move on. You can't dwell on something that could have happened.
Yeah.
Did you understand like the seriousness of this right away? Because like, you know, you're like, he got shot in the leg. You know, it's the leg. He'll be fine. But not understanding, you know, maybe the anatomy and the femoral artery and all that stuff of how that can be so serious. Were you aware of the seriousness of what was going on when you're calling 911 or?
Subconsciously maybe, but I think that, I'm not a doctor, so I didn't know there was an artery right there that was really important. And so I thought, okay, the legs, like we can deal with this. Like if this is bad, but it's gonna, like he's not gonna die or even be close to death. So
you call 911. How long until the paramedics get there?
It was a few minutes. And the cops actually came first.
Right. But I went to go get the neighbor boy who.
Yeah. So you found the neighbor explain what he was going through at this point, and if he came over and.
Yeah, I called him over. I just wanted some help because I had Samuel in my arms, and so he came over, and
he's a teenager, right?
Yeah, very distressed, and we went over to Collin and just tried to be there for Collin and stuff. And Collin asked what his name was and stuff, and when he told him his name, well, first I was like, oh good, you're asking his name because what if he runs away, like we need to tell the police. That's what I thought was going through his mind. But no, here's Collin like saying, oh, what's your name? And then he said, it's okay. Like Collin was saying it's okay and trying to calm the boy down. And I was so humbled by that. Like that moment, again, I'll always remember that moment too, because here he is with an arrow in his legs trying.
So just to reiterate this, Collin has an arrow through both of his legs, and he's bleeding here, and he's trying to calm down the boy, which is just pretty incredible. That he's asking his name, he's telling him, he's basically forgiving him on the spot, knowing this kid feels terrible, right? He feels awful, and I'm sure he's not in a very good state of mind at this point. And the fact that you were aware enough and calm enough to be able to calm down the kid when you're the one with the arrow through your leg. What were you thinking at that point?
Well, I mean, God pretty amazingly designed our bodies, I think, obviously. And he, the shock and the adrenaline that was pumping through my body at that time, just seeing him distressed, like you could tell, like obviously there was no intention and there was never any question in our hearts that there was, but the grace of God really poured out, and it was that foundation that we had built up over those years that allowed me to do that. Because, if I wasn't a faithful Christian, there's probably not much of a chance that I could be forgiven this kid who I know is likely almost costing me my life. But, we've developed that relationship, and accidents happen. I've done a lot of stupid stuff in my life that could have costed a lot of people their lives. And, just that grace to forgive that we're called to do. And
the police officer even mentioned later on to us, like how calm he continued to be because he was making jokes. Like when the police officer showed up,
it was the first time we saw him. It was a couple months later. He actually didn't know if I lived or not after that day, but the paramedics and police officers and nurses and
they got like a Life Star Award for that
from the state of Ohio for what they did. And so it was the first time meeting him, and he was telling me, he's like asking me like, hey, how are you doing? Which I don't remember saying this, but he said, I couldn't believe your response. You just said.
He couldn't believe you responded at all.
Yeah. I was like, oh, not too bad besides this arrow in my legs.
The last thing to go is the sense of humor. So, as they say, the first thing to go, you had it all, you're good. So, but this is at this point, I just want to remind everybody that this happened on October 22nd. So this is the feast day of St. John Paul II, a man who himself was shot, and his assassin did mean to kill him, but he recovered from being shot. And one of the first things he did after his recovery was go to the prison and forgive the man that shot him. And so maybe a little bit of grace there and intercession from St. John Paul II to help in that situation as well. So, Collin, they get you into the ambulance. At what point did you pass out? Would you stop being aware of what's going on? What do you remember from that point on?
So the paramedics came and they began working on me, and they had cut the arrow and they were flipping me over. And at that time when they flipped me over, I mean, the arrow was moving around just from that. And they said later on, because we've befriended a lot of the paramedics and police officers and met them a couple more times and have had dinners with them. And they said, like, you know, when they flipped me over, there's like this big pool of blood that it all just started pumping a lot faster. And so I remember asking them, I was like, hey, is it okay if I close my eyes? Like, I didn't tell them I was tired. I've seen a lot of like TV shows, movies, like, you know, don't close your eyes, don't go out of it.
Stay awake.
And they're like, oh, just like, they didn't know I was asking if I could like fall asleep, but you know, all the blood leaving my body, I couldn't help it. And
they're like, yeah, like you can close your eyes. And so I closed my eyes, fall asleep, and I lost consciousness right before they loaded me in the ambulance in our driveway. And that's when they lost my pulse, and they were able to regain it right before the hospital, which is only a few blocks away from our house. So
okay, so did you follow the ambulance, or how did you get to the hospital? What did you do with Samuel? What did you do at this point, Rachel?
Yeah, I was calling my parents, and interestingly enough, my mom and my sister were in Alaska, and they were up some mountain, and I think I talked to Sarah or something, and I said, oh, he's going to be fine. Because at this point, I'm like, it's the legs. It's going to be fine. Yeah. He'll survive. And my mom had that motherly instinct, like, no, Sarah, like they're walking slow down the mountain. My mom's trying to speed up. Like, no, this is bad, Sarah. We need to go down the mountain right now. And then I called his parents, and again, still saying like, it's going to be
They both like told the story of like, they get the phone call from Rachel, and they're like, oh yeah, he just got shot by like probably a dinky little arrow in his calf.
His parents actually came to our house first. They're like, oh, we'll go check on the boys, and then we'll go to the ER and see. But then the people who watched, so we were supposed to hang out with a couple of our friends right before this happened. So they ended up showing up right in time to take Sam, so the police officer could take me to the hospital. So they took Sam, and we're watching him. And Denise and John, they told Denise and John, go to the hospital right away, because they knew it was bad. So the police officer took me to the hospital, the back of his police car. First time I've been in the back of a police car. It was really scary. And he had me go in the waiting room, and there's no one else there. And then he opened the door to the emergency room to go back to see how Collin was doing. And that's when the ambulance had showed up, and Collin was going by that door right at that time that the police officer opened the door. And all of a sudden I hear, I think they were just like, crap, we lost his pressure. And they're all yelling at each other. And then the door shut. And I just remember like looking back at the wall, and I'm like, what just happened? And you know, the pit in your stomach just falls. And I was just started begging with God. I'm like, please don't take him, and just kept repeating that. And you know, definitely feeling like I was going to pass out for a little bit there. But then all of a sudden, just this wave of peace came over me. Unexplainable. I can't explain it. I got up, and I just knew I needed my spiritual family, which is when I called you, and I went to the receptionist, and I'm like, get me a priest. And I was texting people and asking for prayers. And
so the prayer chain starts at this point where like prayers just and it's pretty crazy, because then I start trying to call people or contact people, and they already know. It's pretty amazing how quickly that the word spreads that people were praying. They're praying. And can you feel that? Can you feel the presence of those prayers and the power of those prayers as you as you said, you don't know what's going to happen at this point, and the last thing you heard was they lost his pressure, and you're starting to realize at this point this is pretty serious.
I didn't know if they were going to come out of that door and tell me that we lost him or not, which is, again, just crazy that I still had that peace. I didn't know if he was going to live or die. Like, I'm a person with a lot of anxiety, and I always worry, and that's why it was a miracle in itself that I wasn't freaking out and just because
so they end up life flighting him, correct? They life flight him to Toledo. Yep. From your experience, Collin, I'm just always curious, like what happens, like what's the next thing you remember? Like, do you just wake up and that's like the first thing you remember? Like, what was your experience to the next day? Because you went through surgery all night, right? Like the
accident happened at 7, and I don't think surgery got over with until, so I mean, obviously I was transported in many different hospitals and then life flighted to Toledo, and I don't think surgery ended until 4 o'clock the next morning or so.
Yeah, I'm not for sure on
Just to paint the picture, they said you've lost about 2.5 times the amount of blood in your body.
I think they said he got 17 units of blood.
17 units of blood, and that's you're in the hospital. So all night. So when did you actually, I guess, wake up from this whole experience?
Tuesday morning is when they started taking me off the sedatives.
Okay.
Yeah.
So over a day later. So.
Yeah.
All right. So you just kind of wake up groggy. Did you know immediately what happened or where you were at or what was going on?
I knew that something bad happened, and I mean, I knew it was like the arrow, and I couldn't move my legs, and I had a tube down my throat, and IVs all over my arms, and I woke up and it was my 2 parents and my brother from Texas. He took the first flight home he could find, and and you see someone who is from half the country away, you're like, all right, something bad happened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I couldn't communicate very well because I had the tube in my throat, and it took him a while to get a pen and paper. But yeah, it was.
But he was still trying to make jokes then too, because on the pen and paper, when he had the tube in his throat, he was. What were you trying to joke with your dad?
I was just trying to signal to him. I was probably up for a little bit at this time, and they're surrounding me, and I'm trying to communicate in the best way I can without the tube, and I'm not having any success. So I'm like, I'm gonna mess with Dad. I'm like,
always the go-to.
Like, I can
run faster than you.
And he looks at me. He's like, your legs? Oh, we're not sure how they're going to be. My mom's like, oh, your legs? Like, we're not sure how they're going to be, Collin. Like, we're not sure yet. I'm like, no. I can still run faster than Dad.
That's awesome.
I was able to explain what I was saying when they took the tube out later, and they laughed. But
yeah, that's funny. So Rachel, you experienced a pretty dreadful night. Did you sleep at all that night while he's in surgery, or
no?
Yeah, I'm guessing not. And so everybody's there, and he's going through all the surgery. At what point did you get some consolation where they're like, all right, we know we think he's gonna be okay?
Right. Well, when we got to the hospital, they didn't really give us an update, and it was probably maybe halfway through his surgery. I don't know if his surgery was 6 to 8 hours. I'm not really sure. It was long, but maybe halfway through his surgery, we're like, okay, we are pretty sure he's going to live. It wasn't until the surgeon came out and I'm like, is he going to live? Like, if he loses his legs, if he's paralyzed, like, we can deal with it, but is he going to live? And so, yeah, in the middle of the night is when we found out. But in between all that, like, we showed up to the hospital, and I only called like a few people, I feel like, to come to the hospital with us, and yet people just kept showing up, and like there were like 30 people in that waiting room, all of our friends, and there was a lot of people, Father Tim, and
it was amazing. We have
different mentors. We've
great friends.
Yeah,
really
we
were there the whole night, and
just to have that community, like, that kept me so, like, feeling so supported and calm and just like peaceful about that. I had wow.
So an incredible experience. Like, I can't even imagine going through this night. Even I remember going through the night myself. Even was so hard just to know like what happened. And everybody's on pins and needles. They want to know the updates. They want to know if Collin's okay, without bothering you and keep saying what's going on, what's happening. Like, it's just so hard to know what's happening. But obviously things turned out okay.
Yeah.
And this is only half the story. So the rest of the story is pretty incredible. The recovery, and again, at this point, you don't know, are you going to be able to walk? Are you going to be able to run again? Are you going to have a recovery? Like, what's going to happen? But not only did you recover, you did some pretty amazing things after your recovery. And so in our next episode, we're going to talk about this whole process of recovery, how this experience had influenced your faith, maybe the faith of your friends and your family, and the amazing feat that you accomplished just a year after this accident. And so we're looking forward to hearing about that whole experience in our next episode. So thank you so much for sharing these memories, which can be pretty hard to think about, I think. But obviously, when things turn out as well as they did, it's easier to share with other people. So we'll continue this conversation in our next episode. But until then, this is John Wood reminding you that you were made to be saints. And so just try your best and trust in God's grace to do all the rest.
The Extraordinary Mission Podcast was brought to you by the Deep Roots Club, a group of people investing their time, talent, and treasures into helping today's families build deep roots of faith that can weather any storm. Find out more at www.extraordinarymission.com/get-involved.